So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining and welcome to our program on summer yard and garden pests presented in collaboration with the Hanover Master Gardeners. Our presenter today is Emily Gianfortini, sorry. I did it even though I didn't want to. If you're interested in any other of our programs offered at the Pamunkey Regional Library, make sure to check out our calendar on our website. For instance, the Goochland branch is actually doing a program on selecting plants for landscape design, which will be this Saturday at 11 a.m. They're doing that with the Goochland Master Gardeners. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we will take some time at the end to answer those. And so without further ado, I'll let Emily get started with her presentation.
Okay, let me just start there. So I am a Hanover Master Gardener, and I've been one since 2003. And as a Master Gardener, I volunteer for the Virginia Cooperative Extension Service, the Hanover unit. And I am going to talk today about pests or beneficials, basically your good bugs and your bad bugs in the yards, that now that we're well on our way into the summer months. So we're probably going to be seeing a lot of insects and other bugs in our landscapes. And a lot of times our natural reaction is to get rid of it by one means or another. However, actually unknown to many people is that there are actually a lot of beneficial insects and other kinds of bugs that can help reduce the populations of what we consider to be pest insects. So in this talk, I'm going to pair a pest bug with a beneficial one that can help to control it. So first of all, what exactly is a bug? Of course, we need insects, and those are the creatures with 6 legs, of course, are bugs. But there are other kinds of creatures also that we consider bugs. They might have a hard outer covering or exoskeleton, and maybe instead of 6 legs, have 8 legs, such as spiders, ticks, and mites. So I'm going to include some of those in this talk as well. And when we think of good bugs, usually we think of things like honeybees and ladybugs, but how do we tell a pest insect from what is actually a beneficial insect? And very importantly, how can we encourage the good bugs to come and stay in our yards? Do we do things that can harm the beneficial bugs? So one of the things that can harm the beneficial bugs is insecticides. Insecticides don't discriminate between the insects that we value and those that we don't. So in a yard where sprays have not been used, there'll be a huge variety of insects and other bugs, both good and bad. In each of my slides, there's one beneficial and one pest. So see if you know which is which before I tell you. And since this is a Zoom presentation, I'm not going to be able to hear your answers. So here's the first pair. And the one on the left is a pill bug or a roly-poly or sow bug. And the one on the right is a harlequin bug. And if you guess that the harlequin bug is the pest, then you are right. And here's why. The harlequin bug can devour some of your kale, broccoli, and other vegetables that are in that cole family. And as you can tell by the appearance of the adult, they are in the stink bug family of insects. They look a little bit like a stink bug. And if they're not controlled early in the season, their numbers will rapidly increase, and they will winter over in garden debris and other at around the edges of your garden. So the sow bug or the roly-polies are not really insects, but they are arthropods, and they have this hard kind of outer coating, outer covering. and they have many legs. So we don't usually think of them as beneficial because a lot of times we come across of them in damp places, and there's a lot of rotting vegetation. So we probably assume that they may be eating our crops or our plants, but they're primarily scavengers that eat dead and rotting things. And they are considered beneficial because they help break down this dead material and return the nutrients back to the soil. And as an added benefit, they can eat the eggs of harlequin bugs and other insects. All right, so which of these is the good bug and which is the pest insect? So as you can see, both of them have the word lace in their names, probably because of the lacy pattern on their wings. And both are quite small. You actually need a hand lens to see the lacebug clearly. But the good guy is the one on the right, which is the green lacewing. And here are the nymph or the juvenile stages of both of these, the lacebug nymph and the green lacewing nymph. So neither of them is very pretty. And the green lacewing larva, although it looks nasty, is actually a ferocious pest of aphids and other soft-bodied insects, as well as insect eggs. So here's the lacebug, which is a pest of azaleas, rhododendrons, and some other trees and shrubs. They pierce the leaves from the underside where they kind of hang out and suck out the contents of the leaf cells. And they leave kind of a colorless patches behind after they have sucked out the chlorophyll and the other contents of the cell. And this will result in the leaf looking very spotty and eventually just brown and dead. So the green lacewings can come to the rescue. The larvae are the ones that are the predators. They eat lacebug nymphs and eggs, as well as a lot of other insects, such as aphids. The adult lacewings, however, daintily sip nectar from flowers. So here's a couple more pictures of lacewing larvae eating soft-bodied scale and then eating aphids. And the way they eat them, they pierce the insect and basically suck the juices out. As a side note, the lacewing larvae actually have a great defense against ants, which sometimes guard aphid colonies because the ants eat the honeydew that is secreted by the aphids. So the ants will guard the aphid colonies, but in order to sneak in, the lacewing larva will take the old skins from the aphids it is devoured and kind of toss them up over its back and thus disguise itself from the ants. So insects are really pretty cool. All right, which of these two adults is the good guy for gardeners? So on the left, we have the five-spotted hawk moth, and on the right, we have a little tiny wasp called the Braconid wasp. And it's maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch at the most. So neither of these looks particularly harmful, perhaps to plants, but here you see the larva of the two. So the hawk moth larva is something you're probably familiar with if you've grown tomatoes, and that is the hornworm, this large green caterpillar that can really devour the foliage of your tomato plants. On the right, these little kind of white things are actually pupa cases on the back of the hornworm. So the hornworms, which eat the foliage of tomatoes, peppers, and other plants in this family, they can make pretty quick work of your tomato plant foliage, especially as they get larger and go through the various stages before they become an adult. The Braconid wasp can come to the rescue. If you've ever seen a hornworm with some of these little cocoons on the back of the hornworm, you can be sure that the caterpillar is not going to make it to adulthood. So what happens is the wasp, which is the very pretty little insect, will lay eggs on top of the caterpillar. And when these eggs hatch, the larvae burrow into the caterpillar and actually eat it from the inside out, which is a little gruesome, but the hornworm will not survive to adulthood. So here is a tiny little Braconid wasp that's emerging from one of these pupa cases. It's highly magnified. You can see the pupa cases, but the little wasps, if you're out in your garden, you're probably not going to really notice them. Okay, and another pair, the aphid on the right and the lady beetle larva, the aphid on the left and the lady beetle larva on the right. We often refer to lady beetles as ladybugs, but it's the same thing. So the larva looks like something you might want to squash, but it's actually working really hard for you by eating aphids. Aphids are the pests, and they're small, soft-bodied insects. Sometimes, particularly early in the growing season, you can see hundreds of them busy sucking the juices out of the new growth on your plants. But often, if you'll wait a week or so before you do anything, you might come back and find that there are a lot fewer of them left than when you first noticed them. And that's because the beneficial insects, such as the lady beetle and the green lacewing larva, have been eating them. Ladybug adults also eat aphids, but it's the larva who can really clean up, and one can eat up to 50 or more aphids a day. So here's another twist, though, on lady beetles. We consider them to be beneficial, but that might also partly depend on your perspective and whether you've had an invasion of the Asian lady beetles in your house come the fall. The Asian lady beetles are not native to North America, and they can become a nuisance in your home as they seek warm space to winter over. They also can outcompete our native ladybugs. As you can see this picture of the Asian lady beetle larva eating the native one. So if you look under a bean leaf in your garden and you see these two beetle pupa, which one would you squash? The pupal stage is the resting stage in beetle development. And during this stage, the beetle larva develops into the adult beetle. So hopefully you would look at them closely and then get rid of the Mexican bean beetle, which is the pest of bean plants. How about these two insects? You have a really pretty assassin bug on the left and a planthopper on the right. So the assassin bug is a predator of other insects, and it really looks the part. If you look closely, you can see it has this kind of very sharp mouth part or beak that's folded up just under its head. And the planthopper feeds on plant juices. So planthoppers and leafhoppers, they're in the same family, and they get their names from their ability to quickly jump away when you are something else approaches. So they're very hard to catch by hand. If you see something kind of white and fuzzy on a stem that looks like it's been sucking the juices on the plant, it's probably the nymph stage of the plant hopper. And they're a little easier to catch and squash than the adults. So these interesting looking predatory insects, the assassin bugs, including the wheel bug, which is the one down at the bottom of the page, they're really the beneficials, and they look kind of mean, but as you can see again on these, especially on the wheel bug, it has a very sharp mouth part that's kind of folded up beneath its head. The wheel bugs are really quite large, so you wouldn't want to handle one because they can actually pierce your skin with their beak. There are many different species of assassin bugs. Many of them have colorful bodies and long legs that help them to pounce on their prey. All right, here is another bug, and these are not insects. They happen to be mites. The adults have 8 legs, and they have only 2 body parts, a head and the rest of the body, instead of the 3 body parts like insects have. Spider mites will suck plant juices, and the predatory mites are the predators of spider mites and also other small insects. The mites are very small. They're hard to see without a hand lens, but spider mites, particularly the 2-spotted one on the right, can leave some webbing, which looks a little bit like spider webs, and then they have kind of a dark frass or poop that they leave on the underside of leaves. So these are the 2 most common species that we will see in this area, and they will attack a wide variety of plants. And that's the 2-spotted mite and the southern red mite. And the predatory mites are even smaller than the spider mites. You really wouldn't be able to see them unless you had a good hand lens. And here's some more pictures of the predatory mites in action, eating various soft-bodied insects, some of which are even smaller than they are. All right, here's an easy one. Which one's the pest? A lot of people would say both of them are pests, but the fly on the left is actually a beneficial insect. It's not a house fly. It's not going to come into your house and sit on your food. It's actually a parasitoid, which means that it lays its eggs on the victims, much the way that the Braconid wasp does on the hornworm. And the larvae hatch and burrow into the prey and then eat the victim on the inside. So in the bottom photo, those little white dots on the head of the Japanese beetle are Tachinid Fly eggs. So this beetle probably did not live to reproduce. All right, so these you may be familiar with. They both look like stink bugs, and the one on the left is the stink bug. They're both in the stink bug family, but the brown marmorated stink bug is the pest, and it has come into our state relatively recently, in maybe the past 8 to 10 years, and it has become a significant pest of many vegetable crops and some fruit crops. The spined soldier bug on the right preys on the eggs and the nymphs of other insects, including those of the brown marmorated stink bug. So the stink bug is a pest both in the garden and also in our homes during cold weather, because it will come in much like the Asian ladybugs in the fall, seeking a warm space in our homes to winter over. You can identify it by the kind of the white marks around its shield back and also on its legs. The spined soldier bugs and their nymphs eat the larvae of other beetles and will eat the eggs of the marmorated stink bugs also. Unfortunately, there are not any predatory insects that I know of that will actually attack the adult marmorated stink bug. Okay, so these are just some of the good bugs and bad bugs by our own human perspective. But if we want to encourage more of the beneficial ones to live in our yards, what can we do? Because many of the adults of beneficial insects are nectar drinkers, having a variety of flowering plants so that things are blooming during the entire spring through fall seasons is important. If you have a diversity of flowers, you're going to have a variety of insects. And second, all living things need water, even bugs. So providing some, even if it's in a small container. And of course, be sure to change the water at least once a week. Third, and very important, is refrain from using pesticides, especially insecticides, unless absolutely necessary, because insecticides do kill not just the pests, but also the beneficials. So plants that have very small flowers in a larger flower head are especially appealing to some of the beneficial insects, such as the lacewings and the syrphid flies and the, some of the other very small insects that we might not notice often. And herbs such as mint, thyme, or coriander, if you allow them to go to seed, they're real attractants for some of these small beneficial insects. And finally, it's very important to keep your plants healthy, because your plants that are stressed by lack of water during droughts, or those that are maybe planted in a bed with the wrong pH, so of course get a soil test, or those that need full sun but are planted in too much shade, all of these plants will be suffering some stress, and they will send out chemical signals that they are stressed. And what this does is brings in the pest insects. The pest insects can be attracted by these chemical signals that the plants will sending out. And an unhealthy plant or a plant that is stressed will not be able to ward off the insects. Another interesting thing, though, is that some of these chemical signals can also bring in the predatory insects. So everything is kind of, without our human intervention, can be kept in a better balance. And of course, the predatory insects, because they are predatory, they need some prey to eat. So a healthy yard is really going to maintain that balance of the insects that eat the plants and then those that eat those insect herbivores. So if we eliminate or at least reduce our use of pesticides, nature will work for us and it will save us both time and money and is a lot better for the environment. So here's a final note about treating the yard for ticks and mosquitoes. Here at home, we have received numerous circulars, and also in one day, we see representatives from 2 different mosquito control companies came to our door offering contracts to fog for mosquitoes and ticks. Of course, to all of them, we said no, despite the fact that they claim that they only treat for mosquitoes and ticks, and that the chemical they use is permethrin, is an insecticide that does not discriminate, but will kill any pest. It will also kill any other insect. Some of them say they will use an organic mixture, but that is also, just because it's organic does not mean that it will kill only the pest insects, of course. They can also claim that they don't spray flowers in order to protect the bees, but beneficial insects go where the prey is, and they often rest in shrubbery, whether it's flowering or not. So to control mosquitoes, really the best thing is to empty all standing water at least once a week, because the mosquitoes will lay eggs in even a tablespoon of water or less, in a flower pot saucer, particularly the Asian tiger mosquitoes. So at the very least, you can request, if you already have a contract, request that the company use a repellent rather than a chemical that will kill the insects. And if you have a problem with ticks, or you think you might, just keeping the grass and the weeds mowed short will discourage them. So here is some good news. Hanover Master Gardeners Help Desk, which was virtual during the pandemic, is opening up once again. And during this past year, we were not able to accept any disease or insect samples from the public. But now that we're opening up, we will be able to accept samples again. We've been depending on good digital photos, which actually we found really help with diagnosis. So if you need help with a problem or want to submit a sample, you can call or email our help desk. Here's some tips for what is needed for a good sample. First of all, it's important to not just send us a dead branch or a single leaf, but we need a significant amount of the plant, preferably with some healthy and some diseased leaves, particularly on woody plants. If it's a small plant, you can bring the whole plant, such as a vegetable plant, and bag it in plastic. And then we have some submission forms that you can fill out. And if we get a good sample and a good description of the problem from you, then we have a much better chance of giving you a good diagnosis. And also at the help desk, we can give you from our pest management guide, we can give you specific control measures for whatever your problem may be after we diagnose it. So here is the information. This is our help desk number. And we also have a Gmail address that you can contact us if you have a question, not just for diagnosing insects or diseases, but for any kind of gardening question or landscape yard question that you might have. And we also have a website. If you would like to check our website, has some further good information. And so if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you should be able to unmute yourself and you can ask now.
Yes, back to the mosquitoes, it was dunk, UNK, and I don't know what that is. Dunk.
Okay, you can get those at big box stores, hardware stores. They come in either packaging called mosquito bits, or you can get these kind of donate shaped things that are called mosquito dunks. And what they have in them is a bacterium that is very specific to the mosquito larva, and they will kill the mosquito larva and will not harm your birds or other creatures that might visit your bird bath.
Right. I have a pond and with fish, and my husband got them. He hadn't previously had them, but it's about 1,100 gallon fish pond. That I suppose is to put into the fish pond. They look like peanuts, and they're called dunks.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit.
Excuse me, we have a fish pond.
Yes.
My husband got them, and there's dunks, and so I suppose they're for laying in the water for the mosquito larvae.
Uh-huh.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, actually, maybe if you could type it in the chat box. For some reason, you're kind of breaking up. I didn't quite.
You know, I had this problem last week. All right, where's the chat box?
It's usually down at the bottom of your screen.
It should say chat, and if you click on the chat button, it'll open up the chat box.
Yeah. And if you could read it to me, Verity, that would be great. Yeah, if you were asking about whether the dunks were safe in a fish pond, yes, they should be, because they're specifically formulated just for mosquito larvae, and do not harm fish or frogs or other creatures.
Was that your question, or did you have another? Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any other questions? Because if not, I'm gonna wrap it up. Okay, great. That was so great. Thank you so much for joining us, Emily. It was very informative. I don't garden, but I definitely learned a lot about that. I really appreciate it. So again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to the Hanover Master Gardeners, their website or their email. They're very, very nice, very willing to answer all your gardening questions. If you're interested in other programs, check out the Pamunkey Regional Library website. The calendar on there has all of our programs. Like I said in the beginning, the Goochland branch is actually doing another gardening program this Saturday. I think it's on, I wrote it down, selecting plants for landscape design. So a little different, but still plants. So again, yes, thank you so much everyone for joining. And I'm gonna end the recording now. Bye.
Alrighty. Thank you all.